Good afternoon, the gathering at Scott Memorial. This is Pastor Stephanie with the sermon. My apologies. Poor Robbie got sick last week, so it didn't work out for her and I to put last week's sermon. However, we're going to be together on Tuesday, so as long as both of us are well, we will post this week last week's sermon because it was so good. But she had a large part of it, and wanted to make sure you all didn't miss out on that. So I'll make sure that we do that this week. I forgot my announcement sheet at church. However, what's on my mind was we had a great town hall protocol meeting. Just to clarify, because so there was a little confusion at the beginning. The protocol is for separation and creation of new Methodist denominations, which first has to pass at General Conference before anything would actually happen. However, in the protocol, it's the traditionalists, so the more theologically conservative, who are proposing a split and that they would leave the denomination. Last year during General Conference, it was more the thought that the progressives might leave. However, that is not what is going on in this case. So I wanted to clarify that. The full legislation just came out on February 6th, so that's available if anyone wants to read it. It's a lot. I skimmed through and read through a lot of it in anticipation of the town hall. Also, I think it's this Wednesday, Scott Sisters is having another Mexican night at Plaza Azteca on Laskin, and childcare is provided. Just please let us know so we make sure we have enough childcare workers. Also, though, on Wednesday, we continue to do Fresh Food Wednesday and our clothing locker, so we'd love to have you come be a part of that. Let's see, I feel like there were other announcements. Oh, so we have some VBS meeting coming up. No. Maybe I'm wrong. Children's Church. I'm sorry. A Children's Church meeting coming up, and we're thinking about doing a Easter egg hunt more for our community. So we need a lot of help with that. So those information sessions are coming up. So I invite you to read your announcements since I forget the actual dates. And good to see you, Kendra. All right. So looking at hospitality. Our first scripture. Oh, and if you miss worship, you missed such a good service. The Boy Scouts were there with us today, and it was great to hear how they extend hospitality too, as they shared with our children. So the scripture for today comes from Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 15. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread, so that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready quickly 3 measures of choice flour, knead it and make cakes." Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant, who hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" He said, "There in the tent." Then one said, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the tent entrance behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age, and it had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I have grown old, and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too wonderful for the child? At the set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah will have a son." But Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. He said, "Oh, yes, you did laugh." So we see this beautiful expression of hospitality here. Abraham and Sarah are off living by themselves. They have been promised a covenant that they will be blessed with many descendants, yet they only had one child, Ishmael, through Sarah's handmaiden. So they did not have children of their own. So to be told that you will have many descendants to someone who's barren kind of is a little crazy. Sorry, my nose is a little itchy right now. But here Abraham is sitting by the entrance of his tent during the heat of the day, and he sees these 3 men. And so he runs out to them, again, the heat of the day, runs out to them to welcome them. and ask, can I bring some water to you? Will you stay for a little while and I'll make you some food? Let me bring you some bread. And so they agree to these terms. Yes, please do that. And so he rushes to Sarah, says, Sarah, please make these bread cakes for our guests, and then rushes to their herd. So remember, this is not the time of grocery stores. So their livelihood was in their herd. And so he had his people slaughter a calf. So that was quite a sacrifice to be made. It's not an older cow who has already served you in so many ways, but this is a new calf. And that is what he chooses to serve. So he makes big sacrifices for these visitors and wants to make sure that he extends hospitality in radical ways and shows us what we should do. Now, as we know through this passage, that these men were actually God. God had come down to visit Abraham and promises a son. And so they are blessed in this time of time with guests. Now, time and time again in the Old Testament, especially, God reminds the people that you are to be kind and to be welcoming to the immigrants, the strangers, the sojourners in your midst, because you were once slaves in Egypt. The Exodus story is a story of God hearing the cries of God's people, coming down to deliver them from the hand of slavery. And so time and time again, when God comes down through the prophets and through the laws, says, you need to be kind. Remember, you were once slaves in Egypt, so you need to be kind to others, to the immigrants among you, because that was once you. And so we're reminded of how important it is to welcome people, welcome strangers who happen to come into our doors, and the ones who are right outside our doors that we need to welcome in. Now, here at our church, we are blessed with some awesome greeters. All of our greeters are awesome. And they stand out in our narthex welcome area, and they welcome people. They hand out the announcement sheet so it isn't quite as awkward, and they get to know people, and it's a beautiful thing. We also have a wonderful hospitality team who helps provide the Panera donations that we receive and helps to make them available to all of us. So when our guests come in, we get to say, we thought of you. Here, have some coffee and some pastries. Sit down for a while and let's get to know you. We are blessed with some awesome hospitality teams. Now this Sunday, unfortunately, all of our hospitality people were sick. It is that time of year. And so we were a little scrambling. However, some of our members came together. It was beautiful. Kendra, who is watching right now, she was one who just jumped right in, made sure everything happened. And I am so grateful for those, and shows that even when the best laid plans go awry, that we take this so seriously that we just jump in and make it happen. So praise be to God for that. But the truth is, it's not just the greeters. It's not just the hospitality team that's in charge of welcoming people. It's all of us. Because we know how intimidating it is to walk into our doors for the first time. Imagine it's like starting a brand new job where you don't know anybody, or going, I never go to parties, but if you go to a party and walking in and not knowing who's there and if your friends are there yet, something like that. Or going to a brand new school for our teenagers and kids. It's like that. You have some anxiety and you're not sure if anyone's going to talk to you. And so just making conversation allows people to know that first you notice them, and that two, you are so glad that they are there among us. And so that's our goal. We want to make sure that all of us are taking our role of welcoming others so seriously. I wanted to share with you all a couple of instances in my life where I have been welcomed and extended amazing hospitality. So after I graduated from seminary, I really felt a call to become a missionary. So our global ministries has a young adult missionary program called the US2 program. And so I did that and was sent to Los Angeles, California. Now I've spent most of my life in Virginia or in DC, and so it was quite an experience to suddenly be in Los Angeles, California in a whole new place. And so it was exciting to be welcomed and to receive hospitality because I was brand new. So one of the first people I met is Jean. Jean happens to be the chaplain at UCLA, and she welcomed me in so many ways. I worked around immigration, and her campus ministry is welcoming to all and provides meals to all, and so that has kind of birthed itself into a beautiful ministry with some of the immigrant students at UCLA. And so it was beautiful to be in ministry with her, but she also asked me key questions. She was the first person to ask me if I was safe in my home. And I was like, wow, no one has asked me that. Thank you for being concerned about my safety in the midst of being in a new place. And then she asked, what did I need? And I was in a vulnerable place, and I was missing people and missing friends. So I was like, really, Jean, I need some friends. And she happened to know a young woman who is serving in a similar program through the Episcopal Church. So she connected us together, and Holly and I became wonderful friends. Holly was only there 1 year, so I missed her after she was gone. But it was a beautiful friendship that formed all through my friend Jean extending hospitality. Another friend is my friend Anita. So my home in Los Angeles had a centering prayer, a meditation time once a week that I was a part of, and it was open to the community. And so Anita is Catholic and really enjoys meditation as part of her Catholic faith. And so she happened to come early one evening, and our home always provided food to anyone who wanted it. So she was grabbing some food, and I was grabbing some food. And she was asking how I was, and actually wanted to know how I was doing, not just, in passing, how are you doing? Good, okay, good. But she wanted to know, and so I shared with her, I'm kind of missing home a little bit, and I decided back in the summer, when I started my time as a US2, that I was going to stay in Los Angeles, stay in California for Christmas. And as it got closer, as December approached, I was regretting that decision because I was missing my family. So my first Christmas, not with my immediate family. And so I was sharing that with Anita, and she was like, well, let's get together sometime soon. So I think we went on a hike later that week, and kind of a friendship formed. And then later that very month, she invited me over to be with her family for Christmas Eve. Her family, again, is Catholic. Her mom is from Mexico. And so they have this wonderful tradition of Christmas Eve as their big time, a big feast. And so after I went to the church where I was helping to serve, I went to her mom's house, her parents' house, and had a wonderful time with them, and they just welcomed me into the family. I was invited to Anita's family's get-togethers, any holiday that I happened to be in Los Angeles. And so every Easter I spent with them, and we did Easter egg hunts. We were in our 20s, and we enjoyed it. But it was just beautiful to be welcomed into the family, and it made a world of difference as I was through a season of adjusting in the first 6 months of my being there. And I'm so grateful for that hospitality I received. But in case you need more scripture to convict you, we're turning to one of the scriptures that always convicts me, and that is from Matthew 25. Let's see. Matthew 25, chapter 25. Oh, I said that, I'm sorry. Okay. Verses 31 through 40, sorry. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, at the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? When was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? Then the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it for one of these who are members, the least of these, who are members of my family, you did it to me. So the reminder that we are to welcome the stranger because we are welcoming God. Just as Abraham was surprised later when he realized that those strangers who visited him in Genesis 18, that was God. We should be welcoming others and expecting to see the face of God, because we are all created in the image and likeness of God. This is why we welcome people. Today in the service, we practice something. It's called the 5-10 link. So 5 is about the amount of time, so about 5 minutes before the service begins and after the service ends, we are asking everyone to spend time, those 5 minutes before and after, getting to know people. And so the idea is that within 10 feet of you, so about a little longer than your wingspan, to welcome the people who are around you, to get to know them, and then to link them. So for example, my father went to Penn State. Penn State graduates are incredibly prideful and proud of their university. And so it doesn't take long, usually, when you talk to someone who graduated from Penn State to figure out that they went to Penn State, kind of like Virginia Tech. It's a very similar to Virginia Tech culture. And usually they often wear Nittany Lions or have a Nittany Lion on their car. They're very excited. And so in our church, I have met several families who have Penn State ties. They went to Penn State. And so if I were to meet a guest who came in and in talking to them for a few minutes, learned that they went to Penn State, I would immediately connect them to one of our families, knowing that they would have a ton to talk about. Because who doesn't love talking about Penn State football if you went to Penn State? So that's kind of the idea of linking. Maybe it's you meet a family with 2 young kids who are the same age as another family that you know, and you link them together. Or maybe it's you find out that they work at a place you know someone else works. Or maybe they have similar hobbies or interests. So in the service, we practiced this. We tried it. I actually did not look at the clock, but I think it was about 5 minutes. And we were blessed to have the Boy Scouts, so we had people we didn't know in there. And so the idea was to ask them just a few questions and to get to know people that you didn't know well, even if they've been coming the same service as you for years. So I had some questions up on the screen. One of them I think was what your favorite Disney movie was. Another is where are you from? Because a lot of people aren't from Virginia Beach yet live here. And I forget the other questions. But as the Boy Scouts were sharing, they did the children's moment for us today. They shared that one of the questions they ask is, what's your favorite cereal? So when I was going around, I was having fun asking what people's favorite cereal is. And we have a lot of people who love sugary cereal. Got Cinnamon Toast Crunch a couple of times. So I should have connected those Cinnamon Toast Crunch people. But that's the idea. So if you're at home, I invite you to get to know your kids or your neighbors or other people so that you can continue to connect. All right, friends. Well, it was wonderful talking to you this afternoon. And again, Robbie and I are going to post the video from last week sometime this week so you don't miss out on that. Thanks for joining us, Kendra and Eileen. Have a great afternoon, everyone.